Hey guys, welcome back to the Seagull Football Network. I'm Braden. This is my brother Ben. We are continuing our NFL 2025 draft prospect deep dives, going position by position and talking about the players we like the most coming into the league this year. Today we're going to be talking about the offensive linemen and defensive linemen. So we're getting into the trenches and talking about both sides of the ball there. So Ben, why don't you start us off with your favorite prospect on the offensive line?
Yeah, my favorite offensive lineman is a lot of teams' favorite offensive lineman, and that is offensive tackle Will Campbell out of LSU. Now, before we get started, let's get this out of the way first and foremost. Will Campbell is 100% a tackle at the NFL level. Sure, his hands are small, his arms are short. I don't want to hear it. He plays like a tackle, and anything that his size sets him back on, he has improved his technique to counteract it. Campbell has incredible strength at the point of contact, setting himself up well for both the run and pass game, though he definitely excels more in the run game. He's got incredible hand placement. It very rarely fails upon initial contact. One of his best pass pro attributes is his pickup of extra blitzers after the snap, smoothly handing off to the inside and moving to that new threat as if he always knew it was going to come. On top of his technical expertise, he also has a vicious side to him, which a lot of people don't expect from someone of his size and length. He always aims to end up on top of his target at the end of a rep, and most often he succeeds. It's very underrated brute strength from a player like him. He does obviously struggle with longer pass rushers. To counteract them, he often oversets himself and often gets beaten to the inside because of this. And unfortunately, if he loses off the first step, he often scrambles to catch up and compromises his block even more. That is a weakness that he does have, but he's continuously working to build off of it and improve from it, and you can see that. And it's also something that can be coached throughout his time in the NFL. However, all of Campbell's weaknesses, like I said, are things he's working on. It's something that can be coached, and he's improved every year in terms of technique and processing speed, which makes him a really intriguing specimen for the 2025 NFL draft. It's clear that basically anything he does can be coached out. And so I feel that he's going to be an early to mid first round pick. There are a lot of people speculating whether he's going to be the first tackle off of the board or the second or maybe third. I think he's going to be the first one. Your pick might definitely be the first one off the board as well, but I just think off of pure talent and his ability to put his head down and change anything he does for the better will make him the first tackle off the board. My pro comparison for him is Los Angeles Chargers offensive tackle Rashawn Slater. Slater also measured in much smaller than the average tackle in the 2021 draft, and many teams projected him to guard because of that. But the Chargers took a swing on him at, I think, 13th overall, and in an offense that's run first and allows him to be mauling at the point of attack and really supports his inside, he's really flourished and is consistently one of the best, though underrated, linemen in the league. So I feel Will Campbell will definitely project to a very similar type of player in the NFL. And so for him, good fits in this draft are probably the Jacksonville Jaguars, who really need any help they can get everywhere, but picking at 5 makes them a really good fit for this. The New York Jets, who definitely need tackle help, or the Miami Dolphins, as they just lost Teron Armstead. The whether Campbell falls that far is yet to be seen. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree completely. I think especially when you look at his stats, Will Campbell has been very impressive. Over the 3 seasons he played at LSU, he played in 13 games his first season in 2022, 13 games in 2023, and 12 in 2024. So he's shown a lot of consistency as far as his health goes. But then across that time, he's only given up 4 sacks, 2 in 22 and 2 in 24, which is really, really impressive for somebody playing in a division as competitive or a conference as competitive as LSU is in. As many games as he played, I think those are really, really solid stats. So, yeah, I really also like the comparison to Rashawn Slater. I think he's been a really solid lineman since joining the Chargers. Between him and Joe Alt, they've had, yeah, I think, one of the better tackle duos in the entire league. So I really liked Will Campbell. I liked what I saw from him. And not as worried about his like arm size and whatnot. I think he's shown that his technique is good enough that he can overcome that. And like you said, there's obviously growing to be done, but there aren't any players who go into the league who are, fully ready and prepared. So looking forward to see what team drafts him. I think he would be a really good fit for the Dolphins. Obviously, again, he would have to fall that far down the draft or they'd have to trade up. And I don't really see that happening. But I think that would be a really fun fit for him. Like you mentioned, the lineman that I picked out is one who could also be the first tackle taken in the draft, and that is Missouri's right tackle Armand Membu. At 6'3", 314 pounds, he's a little bit smaller than what is sometimes considered ideal for a tackle, but I really think that he makes up for it through his technique. He is very, very patient. He doesn't get beaten often by spin moves or by stunts. And he also has some upside that you mentioned with Will Campbell that I also saw in JC Latham when we were doing the draft analysis last year, and that is his finishing ability. Uh, Membu ends up on top of the defenders that he's guarding most plays from the film that I was watching. His goal was to play to the very end of the play, finish it with the whistle, and he wanted to be on top of his defender, pushing him into the dirt on every single play. My favorite play that I saw from Membu was against Vanderbilt. The rusher that he was matched up against kind of slipped a little bit on his initial move, and Membu's immediate reaction was just to fall flat on top of him. It was absolutely hilarious to see. One of the biggest issues I did see with Membu, though, is he had a little bit of over pursuit or hurried blocks, especially on run plays, and especially those that went up the middle. He would kind of move too quickly to onto another guy to go block, or he would over pursue, like I mentioned, and guys would get through on his side of the line, and quite a few of them went for tackles for loss. However, I think that with coaching, this is pretty easy to overcome. Just kind of teach him a little bit more of that technique, and I think he could actually be a generational lineman. That being said, what are his best fits? Kind of like you mentioned, I think the Jets are a really good fit, though I've seen him also projected to go to the Giants at third overall. I think it makes more sense for the Giants in this instance. Not that I think that they will go linemen because I think they have bigger needs, but if it was between those two, I think the Giants needed a little bit more, especially if we compare the statistical results between Justin Fields, the Jets' new quarterback, and Russell Wilson, the Giants' new quarterback, with the Steelers last year. Justin Fields definitely seemed to thrive a little bit more behind that offensive line that has not really been too impressive for a little while now. Um, but if I had to guess, I would say the Jets are more likely to take Membo at seventh overall. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think Membo is likely to go pretty early. Again, the Dolphins are a dark horse for him if he falls at all. I think given how well he moves his weight, it really puts him as a good fit for those zone type of offenses like Miami or San Francisco. Unfortunately, he is unlikely to fall that far. I think the Jets are the most likely option, but really it's up to the Jets whether they go Campbell or they go Membu because I think it's pretty much a given that they go tackle at this point. And yeah, I agree. Membu definitely has the ability to be a generational tackle. It's a bold claim. It's a scary call, right? But I think he definitely has the ability to do so. One of the things that scares me the most is he is what 6'3". He's a little on the short side. He's bigger than like Will Campbell, for instance. He's a little on the short side, so he struggled with power rushers from what I saw. But again, it's coachable. You know, when it's a talent that is so, you know, well athletic and everything like that. I mean, you're willing to look past the small things because you know you can coach those. So yeah, I really like Membu, and I think he's definitely going to go top 10, top 12.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Moving on. Who did you list as your more underrated offensive lineman?
My second lineman is it's kind of tough to qualify him as a tackle or a guard because he's played four of the five positions on the offensive line, and that is Gray Zabel from North Dakota State. And he has played both guard positions and both tackle positions. And fun fact, teams have been trying him out at center, having him snap during the draft process just to, see kind of what that flexibility looks like. Zabel is like Will Campbell. Like I said, he projects to multiple positions. But the major difference between the two is Campbell has raw talent and the elite level adaptability that makes his pro level tackle play worthwhile. Unfortunately, Zabel, having played at both positions, tackle and guard, he is likely best off shifting to the interior and honing his craft there in the NFL. He's got great run blocking instinct from both positions, much like another NDSU guard who's currently in the NFL, and that is Cody Mauch, who is Tampa Bay Buccaneer now. He plays guard. His ability to hit low, drive with intensity, and then move to the second level of blocks quickly and efficiently really jumped off the screen immediately. He's one of the best run blockers I watched out of all the guys that we had, especially at guard. Um, However, especially at tackle, he frequently struggled in pass pro sets, especially against longer, faster pass rushers, those types you're going to see out wide. His hand placement was often erratic, too high, allowing leverage quick and a pretty fast edge rush win. One thing that he was very good at in pass pro, however, was his ability to recognize and diagnose and then respond to extra blitzers, very similarly to Campbell. He often took on two or even three guys by himself for a couple of seconds to buy extra time, and he was elite at moving to that right spot to catch those extra guys. Right now, because he was playing tackle and guard, he plays at just over 300 pounds, like 304, 305. But I believe that teams are going to ask him to put on some weight, focus on his run blocking, and he's going to transition into a very good interior zone blocking guard very, very soon in his NFL career. I think he could be a Pro Bowl starter in 2 to 3 years. Like I mentioned, some teams have asked Zabel to snap in pre-draft meetings and workouts. He's shown some potential in that position, which means that it allows him even more flexibility. Guard or center or even an emergency tackle makes you really valuable going into the draft. For that reason, I believe he's going to be a late first, maybe mid to late second. It's pretty broad, just given his ups and downs as a player, but I think he's likely mid first, high second. My pro comparison for him is the Green Bay offensive lineman Elton Jenkins. Jenkins is a very rich comparison. I know he's a very good player, and to compare, a rookie like Zabel to him is pretty scary. But Jenkins has a special ability to play all positions on the line adequately, tackle through center. But really, he shows his star power when he plays guard, and he can lean into his incredible speed, both physically and mentally, at that position. He's an incredibly smart player and has very good strength from the interior. Like I said, plays fast from the guard position, much better than he plays from tackle, and that reminded me really strongly of Zabel. So I believe that Gray Zabel can play just like that and can slot in on a lot of different zone blocking teams. Some that I think may be giving him a look are the Seattle Seahawks, who need a lot of interior offensive line overhaul, the Minnesota Vikings, who pretty much have nobody at the interior offensive line, or the Detroit Lions, who could always use a slot in. Right now, I think they're going to start Christian Mahogany, which isn't a bad thing, but maybe they're looking for somebody to compete at that position.
Yeah, I think the Jenkins comparison is really interesting. Obviously, that's a lot of uh a lot of weight to put on somebody. As Jenkins is such a solid player, but I think Zabel could definitely to live up to that. I also really like the idea of him going to the Vikings. I think that they would definitely like that, but I think the Seahawks are also a really good contender there. We've talked about quite a bit the Seahawks generally and their need for an O line, especially now that Sam Darnold is starting for them.
Yeah, if he's going to go in the first round, Seattle's the most likely team to take him, in my opinion.
Yeah, because I mean we've even talked about right like I'm less of a believer in Sam Darnold with the Seahawks than you are for a couple reasons, and one of the biggest of those is the protection. The
Well,
protection that he
yeah, and
had
I
in
acknowledge the
Minnesota.
offensive line for sure.
Yeah, yeah, but it's a very different situation in Seattle. But I think that the addition of somebody like Zabel could definitely help with that and make Sam Darnold look a little bit more like he did in Minnesota. So I really like that fit. All right, the offensive lineman that I picked that's a little bit more underrated is one that is probably more deserving to be underrated, and that is Charles Grant, left tackle from William and Mary. And that right there is the reason that I think he's getting, looked over a little bit as he's from a very small school. He William and Mary is an FCS school, so they're kind of a division down below most of the college teams that we take a look at. Those are FBS. But he does have impressive statistics and highlights. He allowed 0 sacks in his breakout season in 2022 and only one in 2023. He's very, very strong. He wrestled before playing football. So he's got really good strength, and at 6'3", 311, he's got pretty good size. He might need to put a couple extra pounds on generally, but he's also, like we mentioned before, a very strong finisher. He's really good at playing up to the whistle. and he plays with a lot of physicality. Generally, I think he stands out as a really solid developmental project. Somebody who you don't really want to start right away, but give him a year or two, and I think he could be a really solid starter. Um, the biggest weakness that I noticed is his pad level. He was frequently up a little bit too high, higher than what is preferred or ideal. But he does counteract that with some of his strength. There were a couple plays where it looked like he was going to be too high and he was going to get beat, but he still seemed to manhandle the defender and make his way through. He's currently projected to go late in the third round or later, but I really think that he could be a diamond in the rough type of player. If this is somebody that maybe the Dolphins would be able to get later in the draft and kind of develop up to kind of fill the hole that they're missing on the line, I think that would be a good option. But really, I think he would be a good fit for any team to develop over the next couple of years. What do you think about Charles Grant?
Yeah, he reminds me of Patrick Paul from last year, who, funny enough, is also a
Mm,
Miami draftee. He reminds me of just kind of that player who comes into the draft and it's like he clearly needs a lot of work, but teams are going to draft him in the second or third round because he's really athletic, he's really toolsy, and he's that kind of ball of clay player where you're like, wow, I can turn this into something that I could really use. It's just going to take the time and effort. So he's not as much of a draft for need like Gray Zabel or the two, top talents that we talked about. He's more of a okay, so we're looking at a couple of different players and we're going to draft him for potential because there's a good chance that 3 years down the line we have an all-pro player. And that's him for me, similar to Patrick Paul. And I'm a really big fan of him as a player.
yeah, for sure. Alrighty. That being said, let's go ahead and start talking about defensive linemen. We've kind of split this into two groups: the edge rushers, defensive ends, and then the defensive tackles. So kind of the outside of the defensive line and the interior defensive line. Why don't we start off with the edge players? Ben, who's your favorite edge from this group of linemen?
Yeah, so my favorite edge is an interesting one, and that is Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M. I'll start off with Shamar Stewart is a scary, scary man. He is 6'5" and 267 pounds, but he moves like he weighs 240. He put up historic combine numbers for his position with a 4.59 40-yard dash, a 40-inch vertical, and a near 11-foot broad jump, all of which were in the 95th percentile all time for defensive ends at the combine. Only one other player has matched those numbers in recent memory. Can you name the player? I doubt. I doubt you can.
Uh, my best guess would be probably Jadeveon Clowney.
It is Cleveland Browns defensive end Myles Garrett, also a Texas
Oh
A&M
shoot,
product. Uh,
dang.
in terms of combine numbers, these two were almost identical. Both Texas A&M products too, which is really interesting. However, unfortunately, at this point in time, the comparison kind of stops at the combine. Garrett was an incredibly polished pass rusher with great tools and counter moves coming out of college, but Stewart only has 4.5 sacks in 3 years of play. This comes down to a few factors. It is clear that Stewart wasn't really coached well with his hands at Texas A&M. He relies too heavily on his rare combination of speed and length to get home and doesn't really use his hands in any sort of chops, pushes, or anything really. And if his move stalls out, he doesn't seem to really opt to a counter move at all to confuse or redirect the blocker. He just continues at whatever he started at. That is something that can likely be coached up, but it is a concern. When he did get home, Stewart was incredibly powerful, turning shocking strength at the point of attack into blazing speed to round the corner and take out the QB. But the question really is, can he be coached to get home more often, or will his tools just kind of be tools? And that's the unfortunate reality is a lot of the time, toolsy pass rushers who look like they could be generational get drafted and never really work out. And so he's going to have to go to a team that's willing to work with him and that really wants to bring that out in him. He's got a frame that can definitely add weight if a team wants to. He's played on pretty much every position on the defensive line at various times at A&M, so he can play on the interior. He's got the strength and speed to play on the interior, but he's most likely to play an outside wide nine defensive end. And here's the real interesting part. Stewart produced 39 pressures in 2024, but only had 1.5 sacks. It feels unreal. The guy was putting pressure after pressure after pressure on QBs, but he just wasn't getting home. It's a gamble, but he is a legitimate potential top 10 pick in this draft because of that possibility that he becomes Myles Garrett. Because it is a very real possibility and it's incredibly tantalizing. So my projection for him is early to mid first round, but don't be surprised if he goes at 10. Uh, I genuinely think he could. My pro comparison, Cleveland defensive end Myles Garrett. As I said, he was much more refined coming out of college, but if Stewart can find the right scheme and coach willing to invest in him, he will be a dangerous player with double digit potential in pretty much every season with his incredible speed around the edge and then his strength to turn it into a steamrolling push right at the end if he has to. He just has to learn to apply that raw talent. And in terms of good fits that I think can bring out that talent or that I think he'll fit well in the defense, my first one is the Chicago Bears. They're picking at 10, so it would be a big gamble to take him there. But he's a great fit for Dennis Allen, who looks for these long, rangy pass rushers who have a lot of strength. Another pick could be the Atlanta Falcons, who definitely need pass rush help, even with the pass rush work that they put in during free agency, or the Cincinnati Bengals. That goes without saying.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I actually like all three of those. I would kind of tack on the Panthers as a potential one as well. They also, had a historically bad defense last season. I'm going to kind of talk about that. Uh, I have both my other players that I've picked out as being fits for the Panthers because I think they need help all along the defensive line. Um, but with them currently having Jadeveon Clowney, right, who I already kind of stated is, was my expectation for his comparison there with the just the pure athleticism. I think that would be a good fit as well.
Yeah, I will say the big thing about Carolina, the reason I didn't put them as the best fit is because of what you're about to say. Carolina's picking at seventh, and they're much more likely to walk away with your player than mine.
Yeah, well, that depends on if he falls that low. Because I did pick out Penn State edge Abdul Carter. Carter is a beast. He is, I think, likely to go in the top five, and he absolutely deserves that. He broke out in 2024 as a junior, finishing with 68 total tackles, 4 passes defended, 2 forced fumbles, and 12 sacks in 15 games. He is 6'3", 259 pounds. He has great size, and his strength and speed have been on full display the entire season. He had 4 different games this past season with 2 sacks, including against the soon-to-be national champions Ohio State. His dip move when he dips around a tackle is absolutely deadly. And then once he's in the backfield, he is a heat-seeking missile with one target, the quarterback. His long reach helps him to make contact even against more evasive quarterbacks. There were quite a few plays where they started to escape out of the pocket, and he somehow managed to wrap their ankles up and brought them down. He's helpful against the run as well, making him a very well-rounded defender overall. I think any team would easily be improved with Abdul Carter on their roster. Though I think that the best fits up near the top of the draft are the Tennessee Titans, the New York Giants, and like we just talked about, the Carolina Panthers. With the Titans pretty much being guaranteed to take Cam Ward, they're kind of out of the running here. And I would really love to see the Panthers get Carter if he's still around by the time that they're picking. Their defense absolutely needs work, and I think he would be a really, really good foundation to build upon. I think I currently expect him to go to the Giants, but obviously there's a lot of things that could happen there in the top three that could change that. What did you see from Abdul Carter? What do you kind of like about him?
Yeah, for starters, can we just point out he ran a 4.48, uh, which speed isn't everything, but it's a lot of it, and that's a pretty freaking impressive 40. So similar to a recent Penn State product, Micah Parsons, he also used to play off-ball linebacker and then switched to defensive end. And it's clear that he still needs a little bit of work at defensive end, and that sounds laughable, but what I'm more talking about is He's got all the speed and bend there is. He's incredibly rangy. He needs to work a little bit on his strength. And until that point, I don't see him as a three down pass rusher, but he is still a prospect you don't pass up. He's a player that you pass him up, and 3 years down the line, you're going to be like, "Wow, we really should have drafted him." And so I feel, like you said, the New York Giants are a great, selection for him. I'm not going to make too much of a comment on their front office, but frankly, I don't expect them to take him. I expect them to take a QB or Travis Hunter. But I digress. The point being, Abdul Carter shouldn't fall out of the top five. If he does, it's a travesty. It's an accident. But yeah, he's an incredible player, generational pass rusher. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I mean, really, I think the only reason he won't be going number one is just because the Titans have a bigger need at quarterback. I think he would be a really good fit for them. They
Right.
desperately need a finishing pass rusher. Um, and I think that's,
It's positional valuation at
yeah,
that point. It's QB is more valuable just because the QB is the glue of the team type of
right. And
thing.
I think the same could probably be said for the Browns. I think if the Browns don't take him, it's just because they have a bigger need, right? I don't think anybody's going to look at him and say, no, he's not worth, whatever this pick is. It's, no, we just really need something else more, and it's more valuable to us.
Yeah, pretty much everybody is in agreement that he is the number one prospect in the draft. Unfortunately, he's not going to go first, but yeah, he is the number one
Yeah,
prospect.
100%. I'm really excited to see how he develops in the league, and I think the team he goes to could have an impact on that. But I think he'll be, a solid guy no matter what, no matter where he ends up going. All right, let's jump in and start talking about the defensive tackles, the guys on the interior of the defensive line. Who do you have as your favorite DT from this draft class?
My favorite DT is the DT that many would argue is the best DT in the draft, and that is Mason Graham from the Michigan Wolverines. The most interesting part about Mason Graham is he lined up anywhere from 0 to 5 tech defensive end during his time at Michigan. In the NFL, I believe he fits best at 3 tech, and I think most scouts would agree with me. However, he really is a very versatile prospect. A little surprisingly, he's a lot smaller than many expected, weighing in at just under 300 pounds at the Michigan Pro Day. I think a lot of people expected him around 320 based on how he played. He plays like he's much larger. He's got a wrestling background, and that becomes very clear very quickly on tape, as he's got a great understanding of hand placement and weight usage to really displace linemen. And I mean, he just kind of throws them aside like rag dolls sometimes. Mason Graham has an incredible first step, though he does have late hands sometimes, so he loses reps due to that. Um, he is much better at run defense than pass rushing, especially when you get to the NFL level. But his pass rushing repertoire is still growing. His late season playmaking for the Wolverines was really a big showcase of that. Like I said, he was throwing linemen twice his size in the Northwestern game, just tearing through the line, just making play after play after play. If I remember correctly, it was a 52-7 victory. Um, Graham is not a large defensive tackle, as I said, but he's a great fit in a defense that prioritizes straight ahead, one gap attackers where he can focus on one blocker and just take them out in pursuit of the football. Whether it's a running back, a quarterback, if he can just take one gap and just run straight at it, that's going to be the fit he's got. Um, just as he did at the college level, he will rely much more on good pad level and quickness than brute strength to win reps, but that's just fine. He was Michigan's biggest defensive playmaker for 2 years straight. And mind you, that's on a defense with cornerback Will Johnson, who's also going to go in the first round this year. If a big third down stop must be made, even in the NFL, you can expect Mason Graham to be right in the thick of it. Due to all of this, my projection for him is top 10, no question. Some team is going to take him there because he is incredibly valuable at defensive tackle. Um, my pro comparison for him is Las Vegas Raiders defensive tackle Christian Wilkins, who most of you probably don't know, but he's also usually weighing in right around 290, 295 pounds. So he's a smaller DT as well. Wilkins' entire career has been defined by those characteristics. Great hand usage, prioritizing quickness and athleticism over strength, but he knows how to use his weight to his advantage when he has to. And again, they're both great fits in one gap defenses, usually with 4 down linemen. Think what he ran in Miami for years and what Las Vegas is doing with him as well. Some good fits for Mason Graham based off of that. I could list a lot of teams, but unfortunately, I listed teams up at the top of the draft because those are the teams that are going to take him. And I listed them in order of draft position. First, the New England Patriots picking at number 4. I think it's going to be really tough for them to turn him down unless, Abdul Carter or maybe Travis Hunter are still on the board. He's an incredibly good fit for them. The Jacksonville Jaguars, as I mentioned before, really need everything. And Mason Graham would be a game changer for that defense, or the Chicago Bears. If he falls to 10 for the Chicago Bears, that could be magical for them because they've got Grady Jarrett right now, who's pretty much the same archetype, a little bit on the stronger side, but he's older. He's 32 or 33 at this point. So bringing in a young guy to really complement him on that defensive line of 4 would be incredible for them.
Yeah, for sure. I also really liked Mason Graham. I think there's a reason that he's kind of the consensus top defensive tackle in this draft class. I was also a little bit surprised about his size. I had seen a couple different highlights, just generally going around as people are talking about the draft, and I thought he looked a lot bigger than what his stats actually are. But yeah, I think he's a really solid prospect. Definitely going to go in the top 10. I've seen him going as high as I want to say 5 or 6, um,
It could happen.
maybe even 4. I think New England's at 4, right?
Yes.
I might have seen a couple with him going at 4 then as well, because I think I've seen him projected to the Patriots. But yeah, I think he's going to be a really, really solid option. I think he would be a good fit for the Bears. I personally don't have a whole lot of faith in Grady Jarrett's ability to stay healthy at this point. Um, Obviously, if he can play, half a season and get good stats, I think that's great. If he can play a full season, that's incredible. But I think the Bears are definitely going to want somebody to come in and kind of fill in, especially second half of the season if he starts getting injured or just a little bit more worn out. Um, Interestingly enough, the defensive tackle that I picked to talk about is also from Michigan, played with Mason Graham, and that is Kenneth Grant. Clearly, Grant is not the best defensive tackle at Michigan, since we just talked about Mason Graham going top 10, and Grant will not. Um, However, Grant has very similar stats in terms of sacks and tackles to Mason Graham, and he has some very fun highlights that I think make him a really fun prospect. He plays with heart, and it's clear that he gives 110% every single snap that he's on the field. He had an interception in 2023 after a pass deflection sent the ball spiraling up in the air, and he came down with it. And he also got a chance to play a little bit like an offensive lineman on a Mike Sainristil interception, helping clear the way down the field. So just some really fun little clips from him that I was able to find. Against Penn State in 2024, the 340-pound Kenneth Grant chased down running back Keytron Allen after his teammates all failed to bring him down. It was probably 30 yards down the field, 20 yards down the field that he ended up chasing this running back, and he was the guy to bring him down. He gives his all every single play, and he's got some physical ability there to back all of that up. I think he'll be a fantastic addition for whatever team ends up drafting him. And I personally think he would be a really good fit for the Vikings, who we've talked about need additions in the trenches, as well as the Packers, Panthers, or the Falcons to help kind of relieve the loss of Grady Jarrett. What are your thoughts on Kenneth Grant? What did you see from him?
Yeah, it's almost unfair that he was also at Michigan, both for him and for teams that face Michigan, because for him, he is, I would argue, borderline top 50 talent. I'd say he could go in the first round in a draft that wasn't so heavy in interior defensive line. And then it's unfair for teams that face Michigan because, I mean, Mason Graham is that gap shooter who's you never know exactly what move he's going to throw at you, but that lineman is going to be on the floor. And then you have Kenneth Grant, who is 350 pounds of pure muscle, and he's also got some wild swim moves in his pocket. But he's also just, I mean, he can grab guys and just literally backpedal them directly into the QB. He's got insane strength. He also ran like a 5'1" 40 at 350 pounds, which is just, again, it's just unfair. It's unfair. And so I feel that if he finds the right system, he could arguably be better than a lot of the interior defensive linemen in this draft class. And I agree with you. Those fits are really, really good. Another team that I think would be a good fit for him would be the Baltimore Ravens. They just lost Michael Pierce to retirement. I feel that they love their multiple fronts with variations of different sizes of linemen, and I think Kenneth Grant would slot right in there with them.
That's a really good point. I think he would be a really good Michael Pierce replacement. That makes a lot of sense.
Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching again. We really enjoy doing this kind of stuff. We've got one more video on the way we will be filming tomorrow, and that is our linebackers and DBs draft class. So please tune in to watch that. Keep an eye out for this episode. It is 10 days till the first round of the draft is the 24th of April, so keep an eye out for our live stream. We're super excited. We've been working around the clock to plan this out. Please, please, please tune in and watch. Send it to friends. We're so excited to get online and sit for 4 hours and just talk about football with you guys. So again, thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't already, subscribe, leave a comment, and have a great day.